using LT Auditor, understanding LT Auditor. In the architectural workflow diagram, we can see that we have 4 banks of 4 servers. Now these servers could be, they're all LT Auditor agents. They could be domain controllers, workstations, file servers, app servers, wherever the case may be. Each of those LT Auditor agents is going to send its data files to the LT Auditor Manager. The LT Auditor Manager will then insert that data into a database, most likely SQL Server. Then you will open up Reporting Console and you will generate a report from the data that is inserted, has already been inserted into the SQL Server databases. The LT Auditor agents has an LT Auditor service running on there, and its purpose is to read and process the information that is written to a security log, and to translate that information, which is a maze of cryptic gobbledygook basically, into a human readable format. LT Auditor will transfer the data files from the agent to the manager on a frequency of 15 minutes by default, and the manager will insert this data into the SQL Server database at a frequency of 15 minutes by default. That is how LT Auditor works. If we look at some of the reports, and just to make a point of the brilliance of LT Auditor, this is the raw information that is written to the security log. But what does it mean? That is a question. So for IS people, it is easier if we present that information, which has already been translated, into a clear and concise report. Very easy to understand. And that is the brilliance of LT Auditor, the translation of the information from the security log into a human readable format. So let's go ahead and open up the Management Console. The Management Console is one of 2 interfaces used by LT Auditor, and it is the centralized administration for the LT Auditor Manager and the LT Auditor agents. In this particular instance, we have one domain controller, which is one LT Auditor agent. It has already been installed and is currently configured to accept the following filter statements by default. Before we look at the filter statements completely, and in order to understand how the events are written to the security log, we must also look at one of the other documents we have, which is the Advanced Audit Policy Configuration. This particular document explains how to set up auditing at the root of the domain and at the appropriate GPO, and for the appropriate GPO, whether it be for the domain controller, domain, file server, whatever the case may be. We have to modify that GPO in order for the auditing to be written to the security log. If you follow the document fairly closely, it will start and show you how to set up auditing at the root of the domain. It is necessary in order for us to capture the Active Directory administrative tasks that this be set up as per this document. Further down, once the auditing is set for Active Directory, we then have to go back in and set the auditing at the GPO. For the appropriate GPO for the domain controller, domains, app server, whatever the case may be. Follow the directions closely. It is clear and concise. By setting up this auditing at the root of the domain and for the appropriate GPO, your administrative tasks or file system tasks, whatever the case may be, will cause an event to be written to the security log. The LT Auditor for Windows service on that agent will read and process that information. It will then create a data file, and that data file will be sent from the agent to the manager on a frequency of 15 minutes, and the manager will then insert the data into the SQL Server database on a frequency of 15 minutes by default. We can change it, and I will show you how to do that in the Management Console. Let's look at the management console. What do we have in here as default filter statements? We have one agent within the domain controller group. We can double click it and it says assigned. What that means is that this particular agent has been assigned to this particular manager. If I need to modify any of the information for that agent, I can right click and modify the information. Easy as that. I can also restart the LT Auditor for Windows service, assuming I'm domain admin, from this location also. Let's look at the Active Directory auditing. By default, the domain controller group has 3 filter statements. Two excludes and 1 include. Let's look at the exclude statement. It's enabled. There's an exclude statement. All operations, all AD, all users. No, not quite. We're actually excluding some system users here. I can add a user as an example. I could add myself in using wildcards. And therefore I'm excluding myself from being audited. I can also delete myself. In other words, it's customizable. I can add and remove users at will. For all nodes, and the action tab we'll leave alone for this time. Let me click on OK. The second exclude filter statement has a specific operation. Modify object. Tends to create a lot of very much noise, and the information presented to us is not that relevant, so we exclude it. The include filter statement, let's look at the operations. These are all the Active Directory operations that LT Auditor captures. If you go back and look at the PDF file, the Advanced Audit Policy Configuration, and you scroll down to one of the appendixes, you will see Appendix A. These are the specific event IDs that LT Auditor is looking for in a security log of a domain controller, workstation, file server, whatever the case may be. So LT Auditor for Windows Service is reading and processing the information into the security log, but specifically is looking for these specific event IDs. As you can see, for enable account, that event ID has to be 4722. So the LT Auditor does not read and process every event ID that's written to security, only those event IDs that are relevant to the LTA operations. Let's go back to the management console again. So we can see all the information or the operations that LT Auditor can capture. Active Directory, we have all objects, classes, all attributes, the entire directory. All users, all nodes, and the action tab we'll go over a little bit later. Click on OK. If I look at the properties of the domain controller group, what I can see is that the transfer interval, the frequency at which the agent will transfer its data files from agent to manager, is set for 15 minutes. I can set it up, I can set it down, whatever the case may be. 15 minutes is usually a good number that we've found in the past. On each of the agents, and the LT Auditor Manager is in itself its own agent, the data files that are sent from agent to manager and inserted into the database are retained on the agent for a period of 7 days by default. If this space is going to be an issue, reduce this number of days as needed. And then if you make any changes, just click on OK. And those changes will subsequently trickle on down to the agents within a 5 minutes or so. So when we look at the domain controller group, we can see the audit subsystems. We have Active Directory, Group Policy, Log 1, File System, and Native Event Log. Removable device auditing is primarily for workstations, and we'll see that in the workstation group shortly. Group policy auditing, relevant really only to domain controllers. And if we look at the operations, we can capture it within group policy, there is a tremendous amount for both computer and user. By default, all operations are selected. All objects, all users, all nodes, and the action tab will leave alone for the time being. Logon server auditing. Again, we have two statements. We notice there's an exclude statement. If we look at the operations, all operations, users, oh yeah, here we go. We have the same similar users as we had for the Active Directory auditing exclude filter statement. Again, I can add and remove users to this. So I could exclude myself, add myself in, and I can take myself away again so that I am being audited. Click on yes and OK. The default include filter statement. Let's look at the operations we're capturing. There's approximately 10 different types of logons that are written to the security log. Now, if we look at these closely, interactive and remote interactive logon are the only two that have set for success and failure. Interactive logon and remote interactive logon, success and failure. If I look at the network logon, you will notice that it's only set for failure. Therefore, everybody, any user that has been logging into the domain will not be captured for a successful login, only a failed login. If you wish to capture successful logins for the domain, you would have to click on success, check it, and click on OK. And you will now notice, if I go back into that filter statement, we will see interactive and network logins now set for success and failure, but the rest of them, batch, service, unlock, network clear, new credentials, are all set for failure only, as well as cached interactive logon. We do not capture log-offs by default. If you wish to capture log-offs, just check it. And then you'll click on OK and save the changes. Authentication. Some people still use the Kerberos authentication. Therefore, by default, we capture that. System is not checked by default. Time changed and event log cleared. An application, which means process started, process stopped, can generate a shocking amount of activity in a very short period of time. So please be careful with that one. So let's go back. And then we've also auditing all users, all nodes, and the action tab we'll talk about later. File system. Not that you're going to audit file system on a domain controller, and I'll show you that in one of the Windows edge groups. It's a lot easier to do so. Native event log. Native event log means that if I have an event ID that's written to the system log or the application log, and I wish to capture that, I can come in and specify that specific event ID. For example, let's say that I wanted to capture a specific operation that writes event ID 1234 to the system log. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to say it's a system log. Description, let's call it unknown. All sources, all categories, and the event ID is 1234. So that event ID, LTR does not know what it is, but we're going to capture it. We said, hey, I want to capture this event ID because it's relative to me. It's important to me. So therefore, when I look at this event ID 1234, I can click on this, click on OK, and now I have a new filter statement for capturing event ID 1234 from the system log. So we have just customized one of the native event log auditing filter statements to capture event ID 1234, which is written to security log, which is important for you. If I need to delete that, right click, delete. Let's go back to Active Directory auditing. Let's say that I wanted to add capture or send myself an SMTP alert when a member is added to the domain's admin group. So let's just call this domain admin. SMTP alert. Operations. Let's go to the operations. We're going to go to group membership. Added. I'm going to be very specific here, and I'm going to say I want to know only if added to the domain admins. I'm going to use a wildcard, which is an asterisk. I'm going to click on OK. I'm going to select all users, all nodes, action tab. I'm going to check SMTP alert from alerts at bluelance.com. Subject. And I'm also going to check and run emergency transfer job, and what that does for this specific event, it will bypass the transfer interval of 15 minutes from agent to manager, and then it will be inserted into the database a lot quicker. So we're expediting the data file to go from agent to manager database rather than wait for the 15-minute interval, and then go run a report. We want to get that information into the database as soon as possible. Therefore, we're going to run emergency transfer job only for that particular event ID. So let's recap this. So we have a include statement, it's enabled. What do I want? I want to know who is added as a member to the group, and the group is domain admins. For all users, all nodes, I'm going to send myself an SMTP alert. Click on OK, and now we have that filter statement that has been customized. For the domain controller group, we need to enter the SMTP settings. So in this case, I'm just going to go enter the IP address of the SMTP server and click on OK. The SMTP alert originates on the domain controller, not on the LTE manager server. Therefore, since we're using port 25 on the DC has to be open, or at least the Exchange server has to allow incoming traffic from that particular DC. The SMTP alert does not originate from the LTE manager. That is how you customize LTE Auditor for the Active Directory. It's a very clear-cut example. Let's go to the workstation group. For the removable device auditing, you'll notice that we do have two filter statements again, but we did not have that in domain controller group. By default, even though the RDA filter statements are included, they are not active yet. You'll have to come in here and double click on the include filter statement, go to operations, users, files and folders, check removable device, and then click on OK. The exclude filter statement excludes write attribute. If you wish to disable any of the exclude filter statements, just double click and uncheck enable filter. You will now see, let's fill in that. That is now disabled. If I wanted to create my own group, I could right click, agent group, example. The group type will determine the types of default filter statements that group will receive. So for example, let's just say I make it workstation. And this is the name of the manager. the LTA Manager server. Click on OK. So if I look at my example, you will see that I have two statements for RDA removable devices, predominantly for the auditing on workstations. That is how I can create my own group. I can right click, remote install agents to that group. All agents added to that group will accept the default filter statements or any other filter statement that you add to it. Again, look at the domain controller group. We see that there's a last policy deployed date and time. Now what that means is any time that I come in here, add and remove filter statements, modify anything within this group, that last policy deployed date and time will change to the current date and time. The last roll-up, what that means is the last time data was received from the agent and that was inserted into the database. The status is monitoring active, and if necessary, you can always restart the service. If you need to modify it, right-click, edit, modify the information there. The management console, as well as the reporting console, can be installed on any workstation or server, so long as you have the credentials to access those interfaces. You can control it from there. So when we open up the management console or reporting console, this is the information that you need to enter in order for you to use it. Previously, if you recall, we did actually in fact create two database users. One was the LTA Production DB user, and the other was for the LTA Archive DB user for use with the Archive DB. Notice the server name. This is my server name and SQL instance. This is the name of the LTA Auditor Production database. So I could do this and use the LTA test connection, connection successful. So therefore, what that does is by using those users, you only have access to the LTA Production DB users, no other databases on that SQL server. And that's what the beauty of it is. It allows us to install the Manager Console, Reporting Console from any workstation or server that's installed on. The Reporting Console is where we get all our reports from. We're going to generate data from the data that's already been inserted into the database. If we expand the Enterprise Suite and we look at some of the reports, you will see that each of the audit subsystems already has predefined reports. So if I expand the Enterprise Suite, specifically the Active Directory Auditing, you'll see all the various reports here that are already been pre-configured for you. Before you modify any of these reports, or if you're going to customize any of the reports, go up to the toolbar and make a copy. Try to use that rather than use the default one, just in case somebody else has modified it, or you modify it and then save it and somebody else thinks it's the default operations when it actually in fact is not. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use this user accounts created report. I'm going to edit this, and you'll see that the operation is create object success. All objects, user class only. all attributes, all users, nodes, servers. The most important tab for this, for any query, report query, is the date and time tab. If you have a select date checked and you do not have any start and end dates, you will be querying all of the Active Directory data within that database. So for example, if you had 60 days worth of data in that particular table, you're going to query on all 60 days. If I come into, unless you specify a start date and end date, but if I use the reference date and I say, let's just do a prior number of days 1, what does that mean? It means from the minute I run that report back 24 hours, back to midnight, and then back 24 hours. So I'm going to get all of yesterday's report plus all of today's up to the moment I execute that report. When you're scheduling reports, this is how you will use the date and time tab. You will put a reference date in there. Prior number of days would be 1. For a daily frequency, for a weekly frequency, you could put it to 6 or 7, depending on what time the report is actually run. So for this sake of argument, we're going to say user accounts created on a daily basis, and we're going to schedule this. Before we can schedule a report, the output of that report has to be to email, file, or printer. You cannot schedule a report to show on screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the SMTP settings prior to this. I'm just going to go I'm going to click on OK, save that information. So what I want to do, I want to schedule this report. I want to run on a daily basis, and I want to receive a copy of it at 7 AM every morning. I'm going to click on the advanced settings. I'm going to go, you can modify the title, subtitle, show header, footer, that's up to you. Go to the output. The report file name is the format in which it's presented to you. So you have, on this particular report query, we have 4 choices. Chronological column report, chronological column report grouped by user, grouped by operation, and summary grouped by user. By default, we're going to just use the chronological column report. And we're going to email that report. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a reports folder on the local server. So I'm just going to go to C drive, and I'm going to create a reports folder. I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to give it a file name, and first I'm going to browse the location where I'm going to store that hard copy of that PDF file. Now users, click on save. From, example, has to be in a valid email format, reports@bluelance.com. And we're going to send it to click on OK. So now we have configured the report query. We have configured the advanced settings. And now we have to schedule it. 2 ways to schedule it: highlight, right click, schedule report, or you can go up to toolbar, schedule report. Now, for the first time after the installation, you will have to click on add. Connection name, let's call it default. This is the SQL Server connection information. SQL Server name. Well, this is the SQL Server name right up here. So let's go ahead and get that information. Easier to get all this information from here. Uh-oh. Let's do that again. It won't allow me to copy the information. We can use Windows Authentication, or we can use SQL Authentication using the LTA PRO -db user, which we created during installation of the Security Management Framework for the first time on the manager. Test connection, we're good to go. Click on OK. Click on OK again. This is where you will schedule your report. Schedule that for 7 in the morning. And we'll leave it at AM. Click on OK. That report has now been scheduled. Recapping, you cannot schedule a report to screen, so it has to go to either email, hard copy locally, or printer, not recommended. If we look at the report menu, view scheduled reports, we will see that this report has now been scheduled to run at 7 AM on a daily frequency. How do I query on some of these reports? Let's take another example. Let's look at the all activity report. Let's create a new one in actual fact. I'm going to modify this guy. I'm going to take away the 90 days. I'm going to put it down to 1. We're going to customize this report. So what I want to do here, I want to know what operations were performed on a user object. So I'm going to leave it all operations. Look at the object. I'm going to uncheck all objects. I'm going to add an object. The object is R. Kelly. He's an Active Directory user. Click on OK. All classes. Well, I could select user class, since he is a user. I could select attributes if applicable. The users, no. We're going to select all users because we want to know anybody who has performed any operation on this object R. Kelly. All nodes from all servers. And the date and time, well, let's run it from a select date. The start date, let's put it back to April the 1st, and the end date is today. I'm just going to click on OK. Look at the Advanced tab. I can select the Show Report on Screen this time. Not going to be a lot of information in here at this time because we just installed LTO, but you'll understand how I can query on a specific name. Report comes up. No data, but that's what we expected. But how we did this, I wanted to know who performed, what operations were performed on the object R. Kelly, which was a user class of objects by all users from all nodes on any server. That's how we customized it. Even group policy, you will notice, has a tremendous number of pre-configured reports. Logon server auditing, same thing. File system auditing, same thing. If at any time you wish to create your own report, just highlight the category, right click, new report query, and you can just click on OK, and you'll see it comes up in your report query here. For LT Auditor for Windows, we also have some compliance reports. We use Audit Trails. LT Auditor for Windows is Audit Trails. And if you look at some of the reports, you will see on the right hand side a very good description of what that report query pertains to. These are the compliance reports. Predominantly you're going to be using LT Auditor for Windows Enterprise Suite from Active Directory, Group Policy, Logon, or File System Auditing. So what I will show you is some of the reports. Since we just installed this, and I already have some reports, what I will do is show you the LTA reports. Accounts enabled, disabled report. Again, the beauty and the brilliance of LT Auditor is in its translation of the raw data into a human readable format. It is clear and very concise. Let's select another report. File operations. Rename file, write file, remove directory, make directory. GPO changes. Group membership changes. Interactive logon. So let's see if we can do this to show you some of the information that can be written to the security log, and the data files will be received. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up PowerShell, and we're going to run this PowerShell script, create some information. See if we can get that information in the database. I'll do that again. Now, the information was actually written to the security log on one of the other servers on the domain controller. We switch to the domain controller and we look at the security log on that domain controller. you should see those events ID that they were written to it. And there you'll see the entries been written to the security log. Those were caused by me running that PowerShell script, but to show you the information that's been written. So we have log on, log offs, and directory service changes. In other words, we created objects, deleted objects, and there you have it all there. So let's go back to the LT Manager server. This is a server that's going to receive the data files from the agent. Those event IDs that were written to the security log just now after I run that PowerShell script, that's going to, the LT Auditor service is going to create a data file that's going to send it from agent to manager, and the manager is going to insert it into the database. What I'm going to do is come back to the management console. And what we're going to do is we're going to expedite the delivery of reports from agent to manager. I'm going to set up a transfer job. By default, as I said earlier on, 15 minutes by default, the transfer interval. We're going to do this a lot quicker. So I'm going to schedule a transfer job manually. I'm going to call it T001. Click on OK. So what we're now going to do is we're going to look at Windows Explorer. I'm going to wait for that data file to come in. All agents are going to send their data files to the LTA Manager server. We're going to look at the directory structure of LT Auditor. Security Management Framework, Manager, roll up, and we can see we're receiving data files fairly quickly here. And these are the data files that were created as a result of running the PowerShell script. They created objects, deleted objects, locked the accounts, and so forth. The LT Auditor read and processed the information that was written to the security log for a specific event ID, 5137 in this case, or one of them anyway. And then create the data file and it sent it from agent to manager. Now the manager will insert these data files into the SQL Server database in a 15-minute interval. We're going to bypass that at this time, and I'm going to send another job, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to insert the data into the database pretty quickly rather than wait the 15 minutes. So here we go. Look at this. Notice that the data has already been moved. So where did it go to? So it goes from rollup server name to backup rollup server name. In other words, the data I'm looking at right now, these data files have already been inserted into the database. ADA is Active Directory Auditing, LSA is Logon Server Auditing, and NEL, the Native Event Log, is specifically restart or stop and restart the LT Auditor service. So let's look at if we can run a report on the data that was created from that PowerShell script that I ran earlier on. So let's go to Active Directory. I'll use this copy of all Active Directory that we created earlier on. So we're going to select all operations, all objects, all classes, all attributes, all users, all nodes, all servers, date and time. I'm going to uncheck start and end date. I'm going to check reference date, and I'm going to put 0. So 0 means I'm only going to generate a report on the activity that was performed today only. I'm going to click on OK. So let's look at this customize. Where is it going to? Let's just show report on screen. So we'll leave it alone, and then we'll come back in and we'll look at the various formats that we can have. We're going to leave it at chronological column report, and we're just going to right click, generate report, or you can come up to the toolbar and generate report. Now you'll see already we have information in here. Fast forward it, and we have 36 pages of Active Directory information now. Because I ran the PowerShell script, there's no node address, but generally speaking, when an individual, a human, creates an administrative task, Active Directory administrative task, you will find a node address. But you can see what was the various classes. You can see the operation, delete attribute, delete object. If I only wanted to report upon, let's just select uncheck all operations. Create objects, let's do that one. Various classes, create objects only. Let's use the organizational unit class. So I want to know create objects, all objects, but I want the class. I want to browse this. I'm going to say organizational unit, I want to add, click on OK, click on OK again, generate report. You'll notice now that all I have are 4 entries. The class object was organizational unit and the operation was create objects. So let's look at some of the names, test OU, move OU. Let's come back here. So let's do this. I'm going to edit it further. I want to further minimize the amount of data that's been reported on. I'm very specific. I'm looking for something specific. So let's choose objects. I can uncheck all objects. I could browse, depending on how much data is in there. It could take some time. Or I can click on here. I'm going to use a wildcard, which is an asterisk, and we're going to say move. So I want to know what objects were created that have the name or the value move in that field. Only organizational units am I interested in this time, the classes. All attributes, all users, all nodes, all servers, date and time tab still for today only. Let's run that report. 2. So now we've gone from 4 to 2. We have queried by operation, by class, and also the object. And I only specified move. So you'll see that move OU was the actual object. But all I did was specify move, asterisk, move, asterisk. Being very granular. So let's go back to this particular query. I'm going to select all operations, all objects, all classes, all attributes, users, nodes, servers. Leave it for today. Generate a report. And we have about 36 pages of it. There you go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the format of that report. We're going to go to the advanced settings. I'm going to go to the output tab. And I'm going to select chronological column report group by user so you can see the format. And you will see that the user was Alba, the domain Alba, and the administrator. That was me. Down to 30 pages. So changing the format can reduce the number of pages. Let's look at the summary reports. I'm going to put the output summary group by operation. Click on OK. Generate report. So now we have the operations. So let's look at disable account. I can double click that and I can get report disable accounts. What about move objects? I can drill down fairly quickly. I can drill down far, but I can do it by operation. Objects that are moved, the operation object move from, create objects, disabled accounts. Go back to the main report again. So now you've seen the various types of output. We can do it group. Well, let's do it group by user. Summary group by user. There you have it. The user is Alba Administrator. Drilling down on these summary reports can only be done when the output is to screen. You cannot do it if it's if it goes to PDF file or any other type of XLS format. It can only be done when you do it to screen. And that is how you use Report Generator. It is sometimes easier if you create your own category and create your own reports within there, rather than use the default. There are some default reports we can schedule, which you could have done at the beginning of the installation of a reporting console, but we generally don't do that. We don't know who wants what report. Different departments, different individuals, we require certain reports, so that's why we don't do it. If you need to do it, you can fill in the blanks. And that is the reporting console. There is another LT Auditor application. It's called a Windows Assessment. The main difference between LT Auditor for Windows and the Windows Assessment is this. LT Auditor for Windows captures the activity in real time as it's written to the security log. The Windows Assessment takes a snapshot of the Active Directory environment at a specific date and time. We can install the Windows Assessment and really show you the difference. But I have some reports here. Let's see, to show you the difference. The installation actually runs parallel with the LT Auditor for Windows. You cannot run the Windows Assessment without having LT Auditor for Windows already installed. LT Auditor Windows Assessment can be run directly from the LT Manager server. Therefore, there's no need to install the Windows Assessment as an agent. It has another interface. But let me show you some of the reports. As I mentioned, if I wanted to know who added and removed a member to a group, LT Auditor for Windows will capture that information in real time as it's written to the security log. So in other words, this is the kind of report I would get. Add member to a group. The Windows Assessment cannot do that. What it can tell me is who are the members of that group. So you'll see that the reports are slightly different, but the Windows Assessment, having taken a snapshot of the Active Directory environment at a specific date and time, can now tell me who the members of the groups are. LT Auditor for Windows cannot do that, but LT Auditor for Windows can capture who is added or removed to a group modifications as it's been written to the security log because it's done in real time. There's another interface we use with LT Auditor Windows Assessment, and that can be downloaded from the Blue Lance website. So if we go to the Blue Lance website and look at support, LT Auditor for Windows Assessment SP3, that's the latest one. I'm going to download that. Let's look at that one. Windows Assessment downloads, and we're going to install this. Zip file, we're going to right click, just check, make sure that zip file is unblocked. It is. We're going to extract it. And then we're going to install it. Assessment SP3, 64-bit, and we're going to install the manager. We could install the Windows Assessment as an agent also, so long as the LT Auditor for Windows is installed also as an agent on that particular server. For ease of use, we actually can run this directly from the LT manager. I'm going to run this as administrator. LT Auditor Windows Assessment will automatically find the location of LT Auditor for Windows, and it will also install it on that particular drive. So there's no need to change drive letters because you're not prompted for that. There's no interactive input required. So now we have installed LT Auditor for Windows Assessment. There is a separate interface for that. So there's now 3 interfaces for LT Auditor. One is the Management Console, which is a centralized administration interface for LT Auditor for Windows. And we have Reporting Console, and now we have Windows Assessment Interface, which is the Windows Assessment configuration. So what this does, the Windows Assessment Interface, is simply we can select specific operations and it scans your Active Directory environment for that particular information that we're looking for, as you can see on the left hand side. Let's just go ahead and show you how to schedule this. We're going to uncheck files. We're not interested in files activity on a DC. We're just going to schedule this. We're going to leave it at default and just click on save. And so you'll now see that this scan, the scan of my Active Directory environment is set for 112:35. Approximately 113 and 15 seconds, that's going to kick off and it will start its scan. It creates a data file and transfers those data files from the directory structure for the LT Windows Assessment to the directory structure of the LT Auditor for Windows Security Management Framework directory structure. And that data is then inserted into the database. And then we can go run a report on it. So these are some of the reports for the Windows Assessment. So we've seen group membership, never logged in, users who have never logged in, non-expiring passwords, users who have not logged in for 90 days to AD. Permissions on files, you can see what this can do. When you're running permissions on, when you're running scans on files or folders, be as granular as possible. The larger the drive, the longer the scan time will actually take. Security permissions on files. Let's do security principles on all use. And users whose password expires, users with passwords expiring in 30 days. Those are some of the reports that Windows Assessment can produce. different from the LT Auditor for Windows, but the two of them go hand in hand. And you will see that the scan has been completed successfully. So what happens now is that information will be inserted into the LT Auditor SQL Server databases, LT Production DB in this instance. We're going to expedite the in-database insertion rather than wait for 15 minutes. Let's just let them do it. And if we look at Windows Explorer, we may even see file names. Windows Assessment Directory Structure, LT Auditor for Windows Directory Structure, and if we look at maybe the files will still be in here. Oh, yeah, it may have gone already. And these files that start SLA, that is an actual fact, the Windows Assessment data files. LSA is Log On Server Authentication, and that information is already in the database, and that we can run a report on that. ADA has already been in there. But this is for the local LT Auditor manager server. So even though it's a manager server, we're still auditing it. I'm still auditing log on authentication. So the information for the Windows assessment is now in the database, so we can go run a report. And we're still using the same interface, reporting console interface that we use with LT Auditor for Windows. We're simply using this particular location now. So let's run a report. We're not going to modify the query too much at this particular time. There's not a lot of data in there, so we'll just leave it. Let's generate a report. There you have it. Scan date, 3rd of April, 1:12 p.m. Central Time. And similar to the LT Auditor for Windows report queries, we can modify or customize these reports if we want to be very granular and drill down. Groups without members, let's see. So that is the two LT Auditor applications. LT Auditor for Windows, which monitors your Active Directory environment in real time. You can scan file systems in real time. The Windows assessment takes a snapshot of the AD environment or your file system at a specific date and time. Both applications use the LT Auditor report console. And the compliance reports also, if we just look at the compliance reports, let's just take FFIEC, the assessment, and audit trails. Audit trails is the LT Auditor for Windows, and the assessment was the LT assessment for Windows, which we just inserted. We just ran the scans and we just inserted that data into the database. So there you have some of the reports that are applicable. And you will see the specific regulations on the right hand side. And that concludes the basics of LT Auditor for Windows operation. Also, if you go to freecyberscan.com, you can have a scan of your Active Directory environment free of charge by clicking on this guy, downloading a zip file and running it. what that free cyber scan does, it will give you this summary report, which is not in the LT Windows assessment. These are the artifacts, and some of these reports you will most likely get with the LT Windows assessment in any case, but this is more or less a summary report that is produced by the free cyber scan. So there you have a summary report with supporting artifacts. It is free. And there you will see some of the information users who not logged in the past 90 days. That report can also be obtained from the LTA Windows assessment. So there's a little bit of overlap, but this particular scan is free, so take advantage of it. If you have any questions, send me an email to support@bluelance.com or call 1-800-856-2583 and ask for support. I'm more than happy to give you support on any of the LTA software applications.